Hi, welcome to Parrot and Wolf. Today we're going to look at negative forms in English. Native English speakers use negative statements almost as much as positive statements because they are the fundamental tools of successful communication. We use negative statements to show the opposite meaning to positive statements and to show disagreement. Now I'm sure you already know there are negative forms for all the verb tenses in English. So to start, let's have a look at present simple first. I speak German. This is a simple positive sentence. When we make this sentence negative, we need to add two new words, do and not. I do not speak German. This is now a negative sentence and it shows the opposite meaning to the positive sentence. The verb do in this sentence is a special verb and is called an auxiliary verb. The form of the auxiliary verb changes when we use a different subject, exactly the same as all other verbs. So let's think, does the sentence use not? Yes. Does the sentence have an auxiliary verb? Yes. So the sentence is negative. We always use an auxiliary verb and not in a negative sentence. The other thing to notice is the word order of negative statements and sentences. Not is always after the auxiliary verb, never before it, always after. Other examples include she doesn't play tennis and people don't work on Sunday. Now, before we talk about other verb tenses, we need to look at another auxiliary verb first. Can you guess which one? Well, yes, it's the usual suspect be. Let's see how it works. I am happy. This is a simple positive sentence in the present tense. When we make it negative, it becomes I am not happy. So where's the auxiliary verb? What about the auxiliary verb do? Well, there's no need to use do because be is already an auxiliary verb. When we talk about states, the verb be is already the auxiliary, so we just add not. Remember, the form of the auxiliary verb be changes when we use a different subject, exactly the same as all other verbs. Other examples include the biscuits aren't very nice and I'm not interested in modern art. Okay, so now we can look at all the other verb tenses to see how to form negative sentences accurately. The past simple first. I spoke German. This is a simple positive sentence, but this time in the past tense. When we make it negative, we form the sentence in exactly the same way, but with two differences. We use the past tense of the auxiliary verb and the present tense of the main verb. This is important to get right. I did not speak German. This can be a bit confusing to begin with, but the good news is both verb forms are the same for all subjects. Other examples include she didn't play tennis and people didn't work on Sunday. The contractions of the verb forms are very important as well. Now, when we use the verb be to talk about states, it's also very similar. I was happy. In the negative form, this simple past sentence becomes I was not happy. Nice and easy. But be careful, the form of the auxiliary verb be in the past tense changes when we use a different subject. Other examples include she wasn't there when I checked and the drinks weren't very expensive. Again, listen to the contractions of the verb forms. Remember, not is always after the auxiliary verb. It's never before it. It's always after. I have not. It's never I not have. Okay, and what about the future simple? I will speak German. This is a simple positive sentence, but this time in the future tense. When we make it negative, the main verb is in present tense, but this time will is the auxiliary verb. I will not speak German. The good news is the verb form is the same for all subjects. For example, she won't play tennis and people won't work on Sunday. And when we use the verb be to talk about states, it's again very similar. I will be happy. In the negative form, this simple future sentence becomes I will not be happy. Both verb forms are the same for all subjects. Other examples include she won't be there when I check and the drinks won't be very expensive. Again, listen to the contractions of the verb forms. So we know the auxiliary verbs do and be. The other auxiliary verb is have, which we need next with present perfect. I have eaten breakfast. Again, this is a simple positive sentence in the present tense and describes a past action in unfinished time. Okay, let's make it negative. I have not eaten breakfast. Here, the auxiliary verb is have, and we also use not as usual. The word order is the same as the other negative sentences. Not is always after the auxiliary verb, never before it. The great news is all the perfect tenses form negative sentences in exactly the same way. For past perfect, I had not eaten breakfast, and for future perfect, I will not have eaten breakfast. Notice that in the future perfect sentence, there are two auxiliary verbs, will, which is modal, and have. We always put not after the first auxiliary verb. Other examples include, the government won't have made a decision by tomorrow, and we hadn't been at the restaurant for very long. And listen to the contractions. Okay, so that's perfect tenses, and thankfully continuous tenses are also quite simple. Let's have a look at present continuous first. I am eating dinner. The negative form is formed in exactly the same way as the other examples where be is the auxiliary verb. I am not eating dinner. The other continuous tenses are formed in exactly the same way. For past continuous, we have I was not eating dinner, and for future continuous, I will not be eating dinner. Other examples include the dog wasn't digging in the garden, and she won't be applying to university this year. You should be getting used to the contractions by now as well. Remember, when there are two auxiliary verbs in a negative sentence, we always put not after the first auxiliary verb. Finally, perfect continuous tenses are formed with exactly the same method as the others. It's all good news today, so there's nothing to be afraid of. Let's get to it. The present perfect continuous is I have been eating lunch. The negative version is I have not been eating lunch. The other perfect continuous tenses are formed in the same way. Past perfect continuous, I had not been eating lunch, and future perfect continuous, I will not have been eating lunch. There are three auxiliary verbs in the future perfect continuous negative sentence, 3 of them. But remember, we always put not after the first auxiliary verb. Nice and easy. Other examples include Ian hadn't been studying at all, and Rory won't have been paying attention to the police. So a last note on English pronunciation, we always contract the verb forms in the same way as we've done throughout this video. For example, I will not, I won't. I had not, I hadn't. I have not, I haven't. I was not, I wasn't. You were not, you weren't. You are not, you aren't. He does not, he doesn't. I do not, I don't. And lastly, I am not, I'm not. Careful with that last one, it has a different contraction. Now these contractions are common when speaking and writing, but of course informal when writing. So to summarize, negative sentences show the opposite meaning to positive sentences. Negative sentences contain an auxiliary verb and the word not, and always contract the negative verb forms. To find out more about learning English for Cambridge and IELTS exams, business and work, or general conversation, visit ParrotandWolf.com.